Welcome on into the podcast. I'm Brett.
Hey, I'm Dorian.
We got the nerd news.
We do, brought to you by You Heard with Nerd. So we're talking some Loki finale. We're going to be going over kind of what the implications are of like that big plot twist here. So we'll get to that in a minute. We're also going to be talking about Black Widow. We're also going to be talking about Margot Robbie possibly retiring from the role of Harley Quinn. Maybe not. It's kind of open to interpretation, I guess, at this point. But let's kick things off. So last week, the Switch OLED was announced, and we weren't too high on it because it wasn't exactly the Switch Pro that we were told about, or we all were led to believe that it was going to be.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there's now a new kid on the block. It's called the Steam Deck. Basically, what it is, it's Valve's portable gaming device here. So it's very much like the Switch. It has a controller on the side of the screen. It almost looks like, by and large, in terms of like this overall design, yeah, very much like a Switch.
You know what it reminded me of though? Like, remember the Sega Game Gear?
It reminded me of the Sega Game Gear.
It reminded me of the layout of that, kind of, just with analog sticks, like the same kind of look almost.
Yeah. So I mean, just a couple of things about this thing. So it has a 1280 by 800 pixel screen. So the screen is 7 inches. Now it's an LCD screen. It's not an OLED screen. So there's that. Nintendo won one on that front.
Yeah.
But it's Bluetooth ready for all your controllers and accessories. So if you want to kind of customize it however you want, you got that option.
You can wear like your current like earbuds and stuff like that. You don't have to it just works with all that stuff.
Right, exactly. And then battery life is about 2 to 8 hours for gameplay, depending on what games you're playing. So pretty similar to like what the Switch's new battery life is with the OLED, and then the revision that they did for the base model. Mm-hmm. And you can dock it or like plug it into a monitor and hook up a keyboard to it. And essentially, like what the guys behind this thing said, that it's essentially a PC. It's like a portable like laptop or PC, just only instead of it like folding over like a typical laptop would, it has a controller built onto the side of it here. So I mean, so what this thing does is it pretty much runs almost all your Steam games. Now, I do have some questions about like some games that would require like a mouse and keyboard to play with. I mean, they do have like those mouse trackpads that are built into it here on both sides to kind of help supplement that. And from what I've heard, they work out pretty well here. But that's we'll see what that actually looks like when it's actually out in the wild and the general public, and they actually like playing with the mouse trackpads or whatever, because they're pretty small. So I'd be kind of surprised if it's actually just as good, if not better than an actual mouse. Right. But that being said, so basically almost all the Steam games, at least, or at least like what they're claiming is all the games on Steam work on this thing. You also have, it's a PC, so you can like go to the Epic Game Store and like play games on there. You have like all the other things that you can install for the most part. So it's got like a lot of like kind of freedom and availability in terms of like playing games. You got a lot to go off of that here. So there's 3 different builds.
Yeah.
So you got a $399, which is I think it's like
64 gigabyte.
Yeah, 64 gigabytes. Let me pull up the official numbers on those here.
I have it all right here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
if you want to rattle those off.
$399 for the 64 gigabyte. It comes with a carrying case. At $400, it probably should.
Now, with that carrying case, is it like one of those like chargeable carrying case, like how like AirPods or like Like,
I don't know. I didn't see like what the carrying case. It doesn't. I don't think it shows it on their website.
Okay.
So I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay.
But the $529 model has 256 gigabytes, and so I'm for the 64, it has a different drive. Like it has an eMMC, where the $529 one and the $649 one have a NMVE SSD, so it has a solid state drive for the other two.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So I'm not sure why that is. I'm sure it's just a cost effective thing, like they went with a different processor, but
yeah.
I don't know. So the 529 has 256 gigabytes, faster storage, obviously with the solid state drive, carrying case, and it has exclusive Steam Community Profile bundle, which I'm not sure what that is. I'm guessing once you purchase it, it tells you. But then we have the top tier one, which is the $649 package, 512 gigabyte, the same SSD drive, fastest storage, premium anti-glare edge glass, exclusive carrying case. So a whole different one. Maybe this one is the chargeable carrying case. I'm not sure. Exclusive Steam Community Profile bundle and exclusive virtual keyboard theme. So I don't know if that doesn't seem like very much for a. I mean, you get double the memory, but that if you put an SD card in for $20, you can get double the memory. So I don't really know.
Well, right, and that was one of the things I forgot to mention. This thing does have like micro SD capabilities, or like a slot for it, right? Yeah,
it totally does. So yeah, I'm interested on like what this actually is going to turn to be, because the anti-glare would be pretty cool, I guess. So you're probably paying a little bit more, maybe like $50 more for the anti-glare edge glass, because I don't know if you've noticed it, but if you can't really play the Switch outside very well, like, so maybe this is kind of to remedy that. Yeah. So basically they've done something cool too. I like what Steam's doing to kind of, what do you call it? Put a hinder on the bots. You have to actually log in for a reservation in order to purchase it. You can't just go and buy them out.
Oh, okay.
So there's a process, because like right now you can go on their website. It's store.steampowered.com/Steam Deck, and you could log in for reservations for any of the models. And then I'm guessing once yours is ready, they'll ship it to you. And it says expected order availability is Q2 of 2022. So
gotcha.
Their slogan's kind of portability meets power, which the Switch definitely doesn't have power. But it says they partnered with AMD to create Steam Deck's custom APU optimized for handling gaming. It is a Zen 2 plus RDNA 2 powerhouse, delivering more than enough performance to run the latest AAA games in a very efficient power envelope. So the big thing is like, if you're already a Steam player, if you're a PC player, your whole library is with you anywhere you go now. It's I
mean, that's kind of the thing about this here is day one, this thing has like thousands of games on it here. And we're talking like, some of the latest games, like, Doom Eternal, just like whatever's available on Steam, at least from what they're saying, it's going to be on this thing. But I do have some questions about this thing, because it's like, we are right now, in the next gen, so to speak, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X. So, and right now, there hasn't been like a ton of games that have like really made it to the point where it's like, yes, you have to have next gen in order to play like the latest games on the market, because they're still coming to, PS4, Xbox One, blah, blah, blah. So my question is, so when we start getting into the actual next gen games, the stuff that can't be run on old gen hardware, what's going to happen with this thing? Is this thing, more future proofed, or is it like on par with the Series X and PlayStation 5, or like the latest gaming PCs out there? That's my question on that. Like, what exactly happens to this thing when we get like a couple more years into this next generation?
Yeah, I could see them doing another console version.
Yeah.
This is obviously made directly to compete with the Nintendo Switch,
Yeah.
which good on them because they must have known something we didn't, that Nintendo wasn't going to deliver on a Pro Series because,
Yeah.
here's the thing. We could talk about this a little too because I think we're both wanted to talk about it, but Nintendo
Yeah.
kind of is in trouble. Now, obviously this could cut into Nintendo's market, but honestly, I don't think it will immediately, especially like the exclusive Nintendo has is what keeps them afloat.
Yeah.
If that wasn't a factor, this would make the Switch obsolete the day it comes out.
Yeah.
But if anything, I think it's going to cut into those other consoles, the PlayStation, the Xbox Series X, or whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
I think it might cut a little bit into their market because not only have you made a console version basically of a PC,
Mhm.
but it's portable and
Yeah.
you can dock it. It can hook up to your TV or your
Your
monitor or whatever
monitor.
you
Yeah.
have. So I think this is honestly more trouble for the other two the other two of the big three companies for consoles than it is Nintendo
Yeah, I mean, it,
to
it
an
really
extent.
come it really comes down to the fact of like, what is this thing going to be looking like in a couple of years? Because that's the main question. Because if the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, if they're running stuff that this thing can't,
Right.
then they're going to be fine for the most part. But if the Steam Deck can run things like either the next, like, for example, like the next Elder Scrolls or something like
Yeah.
that, uh or all the next gen stuff that's going to be coming eventually and all that,
Hmm.
then I think Xbox and, well, granted, Xbox, they're kind of a little bit playing fast and loose with it because pretty much every Xbox exclusive is going to be made available on PC. So technically,
Yeah, that's true. It's just
you
PlayStation then.
you could like play Halo Infinite on
That would be
on a
nuts.
handheld, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, crazy stuff, man. But yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things where it's I'm just not entirely sure, you know, who's gonna like be more in trouble. Now, I think Nintendo definitely is gonna have some trouble with this, just because, for one, this is cutting into the handheld market. And
Yeah.
Nintendo's been the guy that's been dominating it. And the whole point of the Switch is say, hey, play console quality games on the go. And you can also hook it up to your TV and do it that way too here. But,
Right.
because the thing is Nintendo had an opportunity to make a Switch Pro. Instead, they gave us a Switch OLED. And so they made the Switch. They didn't make the Switch Pro. So now Valve is stepping in to fill the void. And
Hmm.
it's gonna, right now, Switch has so much momentum right now. Like, it's been the best selling console for a while. It's hasn't had any signs of slowing down. So we'll see what this is going to be looking like down the horizon here, because you know a lot of the things that Switch had going for it, like, you had like some like downgraded games, or like, games that worked on the Switch but weren't the ideal way to play for like third party PlayStation 4 and Xbox One games, like, Doom and like The Witcher 3. Now
Yeah.
this thing can run it in its ideal form, and you can play it like, on the TV just the way it was intended, blah blah blah, and all that good stuff. So it'll be interesting to see where this is going to go. I mean, I think Nintendo will have to put something out eventually, but I think you're probably talking about maybe 2 years down the line before they actually come out with like an upgraded model of some sort.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this might put a little bit of pressure on them, but I don't see them sweating it, to be honest, especially if they got some bangers coming out when it comes to first party games.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about our best boy, Nic Cage.
Yeah.
So he is no longer associated with the Tiger King. So like Amazon's adaptation of the Tiger King may no longer be happening. Nic Cage recently spoke with Variety and said he is no longer attached to the project. Basically, he chalks this up to the fact that Amazon wasn't able to get a script and production stuff rolling enough to capitalize on the hype of the documentary. Duh. Like if it
Yeah.
didn't come out like 2 weeks after, it was done. And it didn't.
Or
So
yeah, I mean, no, it's one of those things where I'm not really sad about this just because, for one, we have like 10 other Tiger King projects in the works, from various like studios and blah blah blah. But the thing I just don't understand about all of it is like we have as close of a Tiger King show that you're ever going to get. Just making an adaptation of like, you know, of it, like when we have like, a bunch of documentary footage of like the stuff actually happening.
right.
I don't understand how you're going to get like anywhere more authentic than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think anyone cares about Tiger King anymore. Like I don't hear anyone talking about it. So
I think it was just the right place, the right time. It was during the pandemic. It was just the
yeah.
wildest documentary. And like, Joe Exotic was just a crazy person here. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I haven't been seeing too many free Joe Exotic bumper stickers on going around lately. So I think, I think the Tiger King hype train has left the station.
Yeah. Well, Stranger Thing fans, Hopper has a secret and he's not telling quite yet.
Yeah.
So David Harbour came out and said basically that we get to find more about Hopper than we did in previous seasons. We're getting more backstory. And I think he alluded to the fact that basically he was told something season 1 about the character Hopper that
Yeah.
has not been revealed yet, but is to be revealed potentially in this season coming out. He referenced the
Yeah.
boxes in Hopper's attic will be explored in the secret about Hopper that Harbour has known since season 1 will be unveiled. So
Yeah.
interesting. I'm guessing it obviously played into his character as a whole. Like, hey, here's the thing that you're, like I'm motivation, I guess, for the character. Like, hey, here's this thing that your character hasn't told anyone. It's this dark secret, or it's this thing that he doesn't want people to know, whatever it might be. Use that as kind of influence on your character development and stuff like that and how you portray the character. So
yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, so I have a theory on what this could possibly be, but
So do I. Yeah.
but I mean, whenever you're gonna like, take essentially like what is established character like that. I mean, here's the thing. For the most part, Hopper is not the type of guy who has like a ton of secrets. I feel like nowadays here, he's, we've kind of uncovered a lot of like his past and like, what was going on with him when he made the deal with the G-Men at the end of season 1. Like a lot of that stuff has been, uh, on top of the table, and like hasn't been like a lot of speculation or like vagueness to it for the most part. Here we just knew he was a guy who had a family at one point. His daughter ended up getting sick and dying, and then that caused some strife between him and his ex-wife, and so on and so forth. But I think in terms of like what this at least what one of these secrets could be is Will is actually Hopper's kid. Like
Could
this is something I felt like there's been kind of like maybe some hints and clues about ever since like season 1, because you have like implications of like Hopper and Joyce having like a history with each other for a while now, and then you also had Joyce's ex husband basically saying that he never thought that Will was like his kid or something like that, and he had like a kind of like some negative opinions or like some kind of like unspoken words about Hopper in season 1 when we saw him. So it's
Yes.
so I feel like that could definitely be a candidate for like that
Yeah.
secret. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree with you. I think it will definitely have something to do with his marriage or his daughter. Something along those lines. And what you just said makes total sense. With that close relationship, and maybe there's more stuff. Maybe there's stuff we don't know at all. But yeah, I think that's really plausible.
yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
All right, let's talk Loki season 2. It's official. So those of you who don't know, there's a season 2 happening. It was confirmed in the last episode. There was an end credit scene for those, and it's not like a spoiler or anything, I guess, but because the news is out there. But something else we got this week was the director who did this. I can't remember her name.
Kate Herron, I think is what it is.
Or Herdon. Yeah. She will not be
Something
returning
like
as the director. So she always knew it was going to be a one and done thing for her. She's excited that it got picked up for season 2. And in my head, I'm like, well, obviously it's getting picked up for season 2 with you knowing how it ended.
Right.
So we won't say any more quite yet because we're going to get into a spoiler review of the last episode of season 1 in just a minute. But
yeah,
on the heels of that, Agatha will be back in this phase 4, whatever we're calling it. I don't even know what to call this next
she's
era.
Gonna be she'll be popping up somewhere in the MCU down the line. Let's just put it at that here. At least according to Kevin Feige.
Yeah, and we could tie this in with what we were talking about with Loki, but she's going to be in one of the next few movies or shows. Maybe like you said, you're thinking Loki season 2. Is that
Possibly.
what you're thinking?
I'm thinking Loki season 2 seems like a good candidate just because you got essentially a witch versus the god of mischief. Seems like it's almost something that writes itself. I feel like she would be a good fit for that.
Yeah.
Or even Multiverse of Madness. You got Doctor Strange, sorcerer versus a witch. I think that, and we already got Wanda that's going to be coming or popping up in Multiverse of Madness. So
for sure,
it would make sense. I mean, her and Wanda can reunite essentially and like have a round 2 or whatever here. So we'll see.
Yeah. I'm thinking that or Ant-Man 3. I know Ant-Man 3 is going to be throwing phase 4 even further into phase 4. So don't know why. That's just what they're saying, but could be any of those really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just based on like who the villain is going to be for that movie. I mean, and we'll get to more of that when we get actually into the Loki finale. It's good. It would make total sense that this is going to push phase 4 more forward here for the most part.
For sure. All right, let's talk Black Widow. So Black Widow just came out this last week and it had a big splash. I mean, it made 70 million on its opening weekend, or 80 million, sorry. 78 was made internationally and made an additional 60 million off Disney Plus Premier Access. This movie's now pulling in $215 million.
Yeah.
For opening weekend.
I mean,
and it's only what? I mean, did it come out last week? Like last Friday?
It came out on the 9th. Yeah.
Okay,
so as of
it's been out for a solid week.
Last Friday. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, it just goes to show you that anything with Marvel's name on it, it sells. I mean, pretty much, they haven't had like really a big box office dud like in a while here. So I mean, I don't know, not that surprising, even though this is, I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit later because I actually saw Black Widow and we'll kind of get into my opinions on it, but this is not like really an ambitious movie for the MCU here in terms of like introducing new things or characters or blah 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 here. So it's
not the Eternals. It's not like that.
It's not the Eternals. It's not Avengers Endgame, and it still made a
lot of money.
Made money. So
yeah. And for me, I think it didn't matter. Like I have my opinions on Black Widow. Like I didn't think it would do as good as it did, but I don't think it mattered what Marvel movie this was. It's the first one in a year and a half, basically. It's gonna do well. People are gonna want to see it.
Yeah.
This might have been a lot of people's first trek back to the movie theater since the pandemic happened. So yeah, I
Which,
mean, but if you look at those numbers, 60 million off Disney Plus alone, like that's
yeah, that's a
almost
lot.
on par with the box office.
That's a
Like
lot.
Disney Plus is not going anywhere anytime soon for the premiere access
No,
stuff.
no. I can't imagine it will. I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's
I
kind
think
of
it's going to be the wave of the future. I think it's just going to be both. Like
it's a
it,
it's a strong possibility. I feel like, yeah, you have like you might say like, hey, for like for like families that going to the theater is going to cost a lot more than paying $30 to see one movie. You get to watch it multiple times,
yep.
and you
For,
don't have to
yeah.
coordinate everybody getting over there and like keeping an eye on the kids, making sure they're not
Yep.
fighting, blah blah blah. Yeah, I think for like people like that, yeah, I think it's definitely going to work out for them pretty well here.
And yeah, I mean, for me, it was more of I don't want to pay $30 for just me and my wife to watch it. But
Yeah,
when you factor in like other stuff, like if we'd have to get a babysitter or this, that, and the other
right.
thing, like we're planning on going next weekend ish. And so, it'll just take us, a little bit longer to see it. But when Bodhi gets older and we have more kids, like this is going to be a nice alternative. Obviously we'll still go to the movies for the big ones, but like not every
Yeah,
single movie. So this is a nice
no.
alternative on Disney's part to, you know, make it easier on families because you could spend $40 total, 50 if you want to get pizza, some
Yeah,
soda when you're going to go to the movies and
right.
spend $50 just on tickets. You could have a big meal and watch it with the whole fam. So yeah, it's staying
Yeah,
around.
no,
Unlike
yeah. I
who's
mean,
coming up next, but
yeah. Yeah, well, I was just gonna mention.
yeah,
So when I went to go see it, they actually dropped the price of the tickets. Like it's now like just $10
yeah, that's
to
the same over here. Yeah,
to see the movie. Which I remember, like I think the
15.
last movie I saw like in theaters was like maybe Rise of Skywalker or something like that, and that was like
What time did you go? Was
I
it in the
went.
evening?
Yeah, it was like in the evening. Like I think like
Okay,
around like 3 or 4 or somewhere around there.
you might have hit matinee price.
Maybe that was
Yeah,
it.
so because
Yeah.
I think that's what it is over here. It's 10, but
Okay.
yeah, for the matinee. But yeah, let's talk about Harley Quinn. She
Yeah.
might not be coming back for a little bit.
Something.
We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Margot Robbie came out and recently said that she doesn't know when she's going to be playing Harley again. But she feels she needs a break from the character. She had, this was mostly due to her shooting Birds of Prey and Suicide Squad back to back. I mean, makes sense, I guess. But
Yeah.
isn't that what actors do? Like, weren't
Well,
the Lord of the Rings like actors gone for like a decade and then
I
came
mean,
back?
definitely for the TV show, they definitely are. I'll say that
Yeah,
much here. Yeah, no, they were gone for like about 2 years when they filmed like I think 3 movies back to back, something like that. But yeah, I mean, when I'm hearing this, part of me kind of wants to say like, hey, suck it up, Buttercup. This is what being a superhero or comic book character on the big screen basically requires these days. I mean, you look at like people like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and these guys who had to essentially shoot a lot, probably like a couple of movies back to back here.
easily. Yeah.
Yeah. But on the flip side of that, DC has been very wishy-washy with and undecided on like the future of its movies here. So, and it's still kind of up in the air in terms of like whether or not we're going to get a Snyderverse or something like along those lines or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just with all that like behind the scenes drama and just that uncertainty, I think that'd be enough for anybody to want to break away from that and say, yeah, no, I kind of got a little bit more than what I bargained for on this one here.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about more WB properties. One being Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
There's like a million spinoffs in production right now, so I can't. I'm trying to remember which one this is, but the Flea Bottom spinoff has been canceled due to lack of public interest in the announcement.
Yeah.
Dodoy.
Yeah.
So, however,
So
HBO is going to produce 2 more animated spinoffs for Game of Thrones, which will be about the Golden Empire that was never shown in the show. Obviously, it has been said that it has a lot of Chinese imperial influence, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
So
know.
just remind people. So I think this announcement came a couple months back, somewhere around
Yeah,
there. But the Flea Bottom spinoff. So Flea Bottom is the slums of King's Landing. Here, it's like it's basically where all the sewage goes, all the poor people live, blah blah blah. And so, like you and I think many other people, we were kind of like, okay, why are we getting a show about this? This doesn't exactly
yeah,
scream like, oh, millions and millions of dollars here for
right,
to like, get people interested.
for sure.
Um HBO, just stop.
Yeah,
You're like you're almost I feel like you're almost at the point where you're going to make DC blush with how many things you're announcing and canceling and all this stuff here. I mean, I get that, in today's day and age, if there's anything that becomes a phenomenon or successful in any way, shape, or form, it gets a spin-off in some
yeah.
way. Fast and the Furious, X-Men, obviously Game of Thrones, and we'll be
John
talking.
Wick.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that in a minute. But I mean, make spin-offs that make sense. Like make them to the point where they're not you don't have to like force it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, let's talk about that John Wick spinoff. It's being reworked currently. The Continental, which is a series that focuses on the hotels. Y'all know what that is if you know what John Wick is. It's the hotels that the assassins go to that they can't kill each other at until John
Yeah.
Wick does. That's why he gets all the other assassins
Excommunicado.
after him.
Yeah.
Excommunicado.
Yeah.
So it's no longer going to be a regular TV show. Instead, they'll be making the show into 3 90-minute episode limited series and a bigger budget of $20 million. So the show will be set 40 years before the movies. And
Yeah.
what do you think about this?
Well, so when I first heard about this show, I'm like, okay, there's no way you're going to be able to like make season after season after season and still make this interesting. So the fact that they're essentially transitioning and say, hey, we're just only going to have 3 90-minute episodes. It's going to be a 3-night event. We're going to have a bigger budget for that. Now I'm more interested in it just because it actually sounds like, okay, we understand that we can't actually stretch this thing out and still make it interesting. So we'll just make it a limited series, put more money behind it, call it good. And, so I'm actually more interested to see what this actually churns out as opposed to like what it was previously here, I guess.
For sure. Yeah, I think this will be a cool thing, and this is a one and done type of thing to me.
Yeah.
I don't know, unless they strike gold with it and it's like a huge hit. I don't see it being that, but if it is, good for them.
Well, not to mention too, like this movie or this limited series, I guess now, it's supposed to focus on Winston.
Yeah,
So which if you remember from John Wick 3, he and John aren't exactly on good terms, and anybody who's not on good terms with John Wick typically doesn't live very long. So it'd be kind of weird to like continue a show about a guy that gets killed off probably in the next movie or something along those lines.
which will probably happen. We'll see.
We'll see.
Cyberpunk is down but not out, so
Yep.
it's back on the PlayStation store in June.
Yep.
And became the best-selling game for PlayStation Store for the month of June, which means nothing else came out.
Pretty much.
So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was figuring because I mean, here's the thing: when Cyberpunk came out initially, and the reviews for the PC version were pretty well received, or it was well received on the PC end. I was actually kind of hyped and wanted to actually go out and buy it. But then you heard all the stuff about the console version and how that turned out to be garbage and blah blah blah, and that took the wind out of the sails for me. So and since then we just pretty much heard nothing but essentially bad press for Cyberpunk, CD Projekt Red. Now that essentially the one place it got pulled from, it's back and it's actually doing pretty well here. So I'm actually I'm actually surprised that this bad press didn't really slow him down.
Me too. Let's talk about good press because Persona 6
Mm-hmm.
might be being announced very soon.
Possibly.
So Atlas has 7 announcements planned for the Persona 25th anniversary event. The first announcement will be this September and will continue to trickle announcements until September 2022. So this is a whole year thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. You
Yeah.
are the Persona expert in the building. I have played Persona 5. That is all I've played.
Yeah. That's all I played too.
Okay. You're basically an
So I'm
expert. So, you played the one with the extra stuff. I'll say that.
I
How about
did.
that?
I did. I played the vanilla version, the one that came out originally, and then the Royal Edition, which yeah, that's a lot of time to sink into those games here because they're not short.
No.
But yeah, I mean, so I can't speak from being a lifelong Persona fan just because I just got into the series like a couple years back and I played 5. I loved it. So much so I even bought the extra version on it here. But yeah, I would hope that one of these announcements is going to be Persona 6, and chances are probably the last announcement has to be the big banger, which would probably mean that it's Persona 6. But I would imagine there might be like maybe some spin-off games or like maybe like some anime adaptation
An anime would be
announcements.
dope.
Well, I
That
mean
would be really dope.
they already got a anime of Persona 5 already that's out and about. But
It's like a whole series?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't know that. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, they already have it. It's not bad. I mean, I still
Did you know they
I
have a World Ends With You anime?
I did know that here.
Okay.
But yeah, I think with this whole thing, because they like to do a lot of Persona spin-off games and stuff like that. So I think you'll see
Right.
some of that in there. I think you'll see, maybe some like adaptation stuff in there, and hopefully one of these is the actual sequel. So we'll find out.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for our nerd news. We're going to head into our roundtable review. Dorian, talk about us talking about
Stuff.
stuff.
So,
Yeah.
all right. First up, we got Loki. We got the season finale. So we're going into spoilers. If you haven't watched it
Bye.
yet, see you in a couple minutes or whenever you're done watching that. So, all right. So basically, Loki season finale. So at the end of the last episode, they found out where the real puppet master, the man behind the curtain, was hiding out, and basically it's space Hogwarts. That's the vibe I got from
100%.
from this thing. And essentially, what this place is like this thing that exists outside the sacred timeline. Like the sacred timeline is like this thing that's like, I guess, in this different dimension, like just like this light beam in space that's circling around, which I think clues us in on like that in the MCU, time is just cyclical. It just keeps going around and, repeating itself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this essentially this Hogwarts looking mansion out on like some asteroids, and that's where the main guy is, the He Who Remains. So basically who that guy is, as it was kind of subtle in terms of like cluing us in on that. But
Yeah,
it's
I would
Kang
say
the
for the average
Conqueror.
viewer. Yeah, I would say for the average viewer, it was subtle. Yeah, Kang
But
is here.
It's Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, there's not a ton of action in this episode. It's more of it's exposition slash philosophical, kind of like you remember that one part in Matrix Reloaded where Neo talks to the guy who made the Matrix, the architect, and all that.
Yeah.
Like, and he's in that room with all those TV screens. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like what that this episode reminded me of. Is like they're essentially talking about a lot of stuff about like free will, determinism, all this stuff, and like and he's also talking about how he came to be. Essentially, he's from way far ahead in the future,
The 31st century.
Yep. And he basically or
Fought
at
a
least
bunch of themselves.
right, basically a version of himself. Um, basically made technology to where they could like bridge realities here.
Yeah.
So they were able to go to different multiverses, and which ultimately led into the multiversal war. And so then he essentially created the TVA to shut down all the other multiverses and just create one, timeline and one, universe essentially. So, that being said, to make a long story short, they he wanted Loki and Sylvie essentially to take his place and keep the machine running here because he's kind of tired, he's done, he's
He's a lot older than he looks, is what he said.
yeah, he's a lot older than he looks. He's just kind of ready to move on essentially for the most part.
Yeah.
So which leads to Sylvie and Loki having a conflict about it because Loki's kind of seeing a little bit of the bigger picture of seeing like, hey, this is if we kill him and you know the timeline starts branching and we start creating a multiverse, this could like create like a lot of bad stuff coming down the pipe. And Sylvie essentially wants revenge. She also is wanting to say, hey, this doesn't make any sense for us because we won't be able to actually live how we want to live because this guy's going to come in and stop us at every point in time. So basically, they end up fighting it out. Sylvie essentially sends Loki back to the TVA and kills Kang, or at least this version of Kang here. Yeah. And one of the things that Kang warned about was if he got killed, there was going to be a much worse version of him that was going to be coming. Yeah. And pretty much like the end of the episode shows that Loki is already in this new timeline or this new universe that has been created from like the killing of Kang here. And now there's like a statue in the TVA that used to be a statue of a timekeeper. Now it's a statue of Kang here. So it's and that's basically where it ends. We have a season 2 on the way that's going to go more into detail and like what it all means and stuff. And this is multiverse of madness is what it is here.
Yep.
This and the Spider-Man No Way Home. This is all setting up for, I think, for the big phase 4 stuff. And essentially Kang is going to be, at least from the sounds of things, going to be the big bad for phase 4. He's going to be the next Thanos here, which not quite as intimidating as Thanos, but we haven't actually met the actual Kang the Conqueror yet, I guess, at least in terms of like the ultimate villain form of him. So we'll see how that all blows or how that all comes ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess for me, this was a solid episode, super solid. I think it wrapped up stuff well. It didn't wrap up everything, obviously, because we're getting a season 2. Introduces the next big bad in the Marvel universe, being King the Conqueror, and he's a really big Avengers villain. So this is a huge deal. Like, we got more. We got more information than we did on Thanos when Thanos was revealed early on in the MCU. We got that little turn in his head, and that was it. For this, it's like we get this guy who's a version of King, but obviously he's gonna be probably a lot more sinister. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But I think in this episode, Sylvie's pretty dumb. She's pretty selfish. She ends up killing Kang, which results in this. So she basically sends Loki away. She pushes him through one of those portals on the tempad that they have.
Yeah.
And then she threw him through that and then killed King. Because Loki, like you said, wanted to believe him and be like, hey, we cannot let this happen. And, she's hell-bent on free will and making sure that people can live their... And revenge, for sure, revenge. So I knew she would. And so, because we had to set up this next villain. But yeah, it was interesting. Loki's already in this new universe. Basically, he shows up and he's like, all right, I'm back at the TVA. And then Mobius is there. And he's like, what are you doing here? And he's just like, I'm back type of thing. And he's just like, you're an analyst, go analyze stuff. Like,
Yeah, yeah, he
and
didn't even
so
know who he was. Yeah,
yeah, he's like, what the heck is going on? And then he looks out and it's the statue. Um, so yeah, like you said, it plays the idea of free will versus predestination. Really glad we're getting a season 2. Tom Hiddleston said he's going to basically play Loki forever.
yeah,
And I'm about that because he's really, really good at what he
yeah.
does
Oh,
with
absolutely,
the
he is.
character.
Absolutely.
Um, it'll be interesting how this affects the main timeline because, in the last episode when the old Loki, that was there, the one that said he projected himself when the
Yeah,
Thanos neck snap happens. I'm almost
yeah,
guaranteeing that's like what our Loki did. Like I think a lot of people were speculating that in the early stages. Um, but yeah,
yeah,
we'll see. I mean, he could be this Loki in this show could be the new Loki in the main timeline. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm about it. I like this season a lot. I think it's the best Marvel's done so far with shows.
yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think this is Marvel's best show that they've done so far. Um, I think I mean, this finale was not what I was really expecting. I was expecting something a little bit more like along the traditional Marvel lines of like like this big action scene and like this big fight scene or something along those lines type of thing here. But I mean, essentially this it wasn't really like, this big bombastic finale. This is more of like, hey, we're setting up for what's coming down the road type of thing here, which,
Yeah,
you know, depending on what you wanted out of the finale, it could be like either really really satisfying or really disappointing. I could, depending
yeah.
on what you're looking for that finale, but we got some questions answered. We also got some questions raised, like whatever happened to Renslayer? What
Well, she's a principal. We
yeah,
find
so
that out.
right. We find that out, but we also but like where does that lead or what's
Oh, like
going on
what
there?
portal did she go through? Like where's she at now?
Well, right, because I'm assuming that Renslayer is like before like pre-TVA Renslayer
Yes,
when she got scooped up, but then you also have Renslayer who left,
yes,
and then you also what happened to Sylvie at the end of it, which I mean, I'm guessing all this stuff is going to be answered come season 2. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that I was kind of confused by this until like I started actually looking up like what was going on is I did not know that was supposed to be Kang when I was watching that, just because I thought this was like a completely different character called He Who Remains or something like that, blah blah blah. So I thought
hmm
like I did not make that connection that okay, this goofy, you know, dude in a bathrobe was supposed to be Kang. So
yeah. And I would say that was intentional. Like it was
yeah,
breadcrumbs to foreshadow for the people. Now then they're gonna look back on season 1 of Loki and be like, that was the guy. Like
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Like how people can go back to Avengers 1, like, oh, they were so that's who Thanos was, and
yeah,
they were doing that the whole time. I mean, I guess like I guess like the difference, at least for me, is like, I knew about Thanos like almost like the moment like they showed him in Avengers 1. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Thanos. That's the guy
yeah,
with the power glove and all that stuff here.
yeah,
And then
yeah. Kang's a little more obscure, obviously. Like
yeah,
not everyone's gonna know him.
yeah,
If you read the comics or watched the TV shows, like the animated shows, you're gonna know who he is.
gotcha.
For me, when the doors first opened, and you see him, I was like, Kang, like question mark, like is that Kang? It looks like the guy who was gonna play him.
Yeah,
And then when he said, "Yeah, I'm from the 31st century," I was like, "Oh, that's Kang for sure." That's when it kind of solidified it for me. And then he said, "Some
gotcha.
call me the Conqueror," and I was like, "Oh, there it is for
Yep,
those
there it
people who
is.
are looking for it." So,
Yeah,
yeah, it,
I yeah, I thought he was just supposed to be a completely different character called He Who Remains or something like that here, but yeah,
yeah. No,
but
I knew it had to be someone. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, that's all I got for that though. It's pretty solid.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'd say again. this is Marvel's best show. I think like maybe my biggest criticism of the show is like a lot of the fight scenes or action scenes are not like very superhero ish here.
Not at
Like
all.
it's just Loki and Sylvie having like sword fights here for the most part,
Yeah.
which you know coming off of like say something like uh WandaVision where you had that big cool fight scene at the end, or
Hmm.
Falcon Winter Soldier where you had like a lot more like superhero type action. I felt like in terms of in that department they were lacking for the most part, but otherwise, I mean, no, I would say this is Marvel's best show yet. Here, I'm interested to see where they go from here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So next up, so I saw Black Widow, like I mentioned earlier. I'm going to be talking about it. I'm not going to be spoiling it. We're just kind of give you my feelings on it here. Just things I liked, things I didn't like, without getting into like any spoilers detail here. Um, so what I liked about this movie, it has some good action scenes in it. I think you know, the first third or half of the movie, that's where like the best stuff is, the best action scenes, and that's where it's the most interesting, I guess, in my opinion here. And then David Harbour as the Red Guardian, I think he's great. He's kind of more of a comedic character for the most part. Um, but but it's kind of funny, we have a TV show about David Harbour being in Russia
Yeah.
and stranded there, and we also have a movie about David Harbour being essentially stranded in Russia here. So
Hmm.
interesting.
Typecasting.
Typecasting. So, and then Scarlett Johansson is still great as Natasha. And one of the cool things about this movie, at least like, starting out early on, is it definitely has a lot of Winter Soldier vibes to it here. Um, kind of that superhero espionage hybrid.
Yeah.
And like I said before, you feel like a lot of the best stuff in this movie, first half of it, somewhere around there, that's like the actual pretty decent stuff. But kind of getting into what I liked or what I didn't like about it, Taskmaster. They did not do Taskmaster well. I mean, and which is a shame because there's a point in the movie where it seems like he has so much potential, and I think they just ended up squandering him, like uh, almost to the point like X-Men Origins Wolverine squandering here. Yeah,
Yikes. Yikes.
which is really surprising to me that MCU Marvel would do something like this. I figured like they would be well past and learn from that mistake here. Um, but this movie, by and large, this is like essentially like a female led version of Winter Soldier. Like you have a lot of the same story beats as Winter Soldier for the most part. It's just not as good though, unfortunately, and it has a darker tone than most MCU movies. Like there's like some ideas that, or like some themes that they kind of like are trying to they're dipping their toe into it, but they're not actually like committing to it. So it's kind of like, okay, so were you guys actually trying to do something there? Were you not trying to do something there? What was going on?
Yeah.
Um, but you know, anybody who's been watching this show or listening to us for a while, we've always been talking about like how we really didn't feel like this movie really actually justified its existence, at least like at this point in time.
Yeah.
And it really does it, and it that's opinion still holds true after seeing this. It's kind of like, okay, so why did we actually need this movie in 2021 after phase 3 and Natasha is dead, you know? So it does very little to move the MCU forward, except for the post-credit scene. That's like the only thing that it actually does to like actually move it forward. And it doesn't reveal more about Natasha that we really didn't know before or didn't have like an idea about for the most part. It's just maybe expanding on that by and large. It's not like this big bombshell reveal or anything. So I mean, overall, this movie would have made a lot more sense if it came out in phase 3. And even then it would just still be a okay movie. I mean, it's again, feels like a discounted version of the Winter Soldier with a little bit of X-Men Origins Wolverine thrown in there. But I think you're seeing Marvel essentially winding down in terms of like their quality here.
Yeah.
I think this is a movie that essentially was made because it was like Wonder Woman was successful, Captain Marvel was successful, so they're like, all right, we'll give Black Widow, what she's due. And ultimately, I think if this movie, the time for this movie has already passed. It should have happened like after the first Avengers, or like, during phase 3, somewhere around there. But yeah, ultimately, I think this is kind of like, in terms of like MCU movies, this is like bottom of the barrel. I mean, it's better than Captain Marvel. It's better than Thor: The Dark World, but not much better than anything else, I would say.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's it, guys. Just a quick announcement. We're going to be taking a little bit of a break to kind of retool the podcast, see what we're going to do with it next. So we'll be gone for a couple weeks, but be on the lookout for new episodes in the future. Check us out on our social medias. Go ahead and watch an old episode. Go back through some of our deep dives if you want to check those out. Check us out on all our social media: Facebook, Twitter, or not Twitter. We're not on Twitter. Instagram. Oh, yeah, we actually are on Twitter.
I was about to say,
we're on everything.
Sure we are.
Twitter, YouTube, subscribe, all that good stuff. Have an awesome week. Remember, everyone's learned about something.